Hi, I'm Stephanie Bass, and you're in Mixed Company. Welcome to In Mixed Company. This is a podcast discussing mixed race identity and discussing the politics of race comfortably in mixed racial company. On the podcast today, raising biracial children. We're having an interview with Sajah. Do you want me to use your last name, Sajah?
There's not a lot of Sajahs, so not in this part
Just
of town.
Sajah, like Madonna.
Not in this part of town, anyhow.
So, I'll give you a little information about Sajah. Sajah's a wife and mother. Well, she's a wife and a mother of 2 mixed-race children. She currently works as a social justice and equity educator, leading workshops and other programming for teachers and youths. Bible verse Micah chapter 6, verse 8 drives her. I will read you that verse in case you're not familiar. What does the Lord require of you? To do justly, love mercifully, and walk humbly with thy God. She is committed to building a just society for all people, one conversation at a time. She's also my sister. Hi, Sajah.
Hi, Steph. How are you?
My way older sister.
Oh, I knew it was coming.
Well, you're like 30 years older than me, so.
Thanks for having me on the show.
She's not. She's 5 years older than me. So today we're going to be talking about raising biracial children or multiracial children. I see you as kind of an expert because you're doing it. And they're all right, so it's working.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, so that's why I asked you to come on my show.
Thank you.
So I think we'll just start with some questions.
Sure.
I always have questions. So one thing that I like to do on the podcast always is talk about, like what you call yourselves. Like, how do you identify? And so I think it'd be good if we identify, well, how you identify, and then how your children identify.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, yeah, let's start with me.
okay.
So, I identify as Black, although that's more a product of my skin color and culture. Mm-hmm. But I think it's safe to say that a lot of Black people are of mixed race.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you're from, like, a place where there was slavery.
Which I am.
Yeah,
So yeah. But I identify primarily as Black. I identify as an immigrant Canadian.
Okay.
Came here when I was 7. And I would say that I don't mind like interracial couple or mixed race couple.
Okay.
Both of those are...
Because you married a white guy.
I did. So both of those are fine with me. Now in terms of how my kids identify, well, you'd have to ask them specifically.
They're also pretty young.
Yeah, and they're little. So
One of them's super talkative, though, so I think you'd get all the information you want.
I think you would, yeah.
The other one would tell you to get lost.
Maybe. Yeah, okay. Probably would. But in terms of like what I would call my children, well, I just call them exactly that, my children.
Yeah.
My offspring.
Your offspring.
The products of my union.
Oh, ew.
No?
I'm glad they're not listening. It's awkward. What should I not call them?
But I will say that there have been several situations where I've been like, "Oh, that's not cool. You cannot call my children that." So biggest.
Okay, now you have to tell a story. You can't just say there have been some situations.
So I will tell the story.
Okay,
just give me a chance. Okay, so I'll point So when I first met one of my neighbors, remember the one down the street who had the big Confederate flag on the front of his house?
Oh, yeah.
But he took it down.
I'm pretty sure he didn't take it down very willingly.
Well, I'm not sure. But anyhow, he referred to my kids. He's like, hey, are they mulatto?
Oh.
And I was like, no, they're not.
Because that's just Portuguese for mule.
Yeah. Yeah. So please don't call my children mules. Try not to refer to them as animals. Unless they're fun ones, like bunnies or birdies.
Rats.
Well, their dad does call them rats on occasion, but he means it in a loving way.
We love, of course.
Yes.
And, like, I talked about with Dale on another episode, context, right? Like, context is everything.
Context is everything.
And so they have a relationship with your husband, so he can call them that. Like, and I have a relationship with them, so, like, I get away with calling them things that, not terrible things. Now Now I'm being vague, and it sounds like terrible.
Sounds awful.
But it's all about context when you're referring to somebody. So.
And I think in all of these, in every situation where someone has referred to my kids awkwardly, it's where we have no relationship and they're like basically a stranger on the street, or I'm meeting them for the first or second time. So with my neighbor, we had basically just met, and I mean, he said it like right in front of my kids too.
Yeah.
Also had my kids referred to as gremlins. That was not a fun experience. I won't elaborate much more on that one, but yeah, do not call my children gremlins. Do not call anyone's children gremlins.
I don't know. That's a car. That's a terrible 80s movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's not my first choice to call children.
Yeah. Half-breed, not a fan.
Yeah, Laura said the same thing when we were talking about indigenous terms. She's like, don't do that.
No. No. Okay, I am not a breed.
You're brood sow. That's what it reminds me of.
And even if I was a breed, I'm not half of it. I'd be all of it.
You're also not a brood sow.
Yeah, no. And don't call my kids adopted. Because that's just making an assumption.
Yeah. But then, like, sometimes your kids get asked if I'm their mom.
Okay, true enough.
And I'm like, no.
In terms of skin tone, yes, you have more similar skin tone to my children, and you have some similar features too.
You think so? I don't think I really look like that.
I think so. Like, I think hair texture and shape of eyes. I definitely.
It's just weird. I'm like, if I had children, don't you think I would have said something by now?
Exactly. You wouldn't just discover them at like 9 years old. Oh yeah, I got this.
That's mine.
So yeah. I guess an interesting thing that plays out is that people look at my children, and because I'm much darker skinned, they don't expect me to be their mother. For example, you know how you go into Costco and they have samples? But if kids want to have samples, their parents have to be with them?
Yeah.
So this just happened to us the other day.
For allergies.
It happens pretty regularly. So the people giving out samples are nice people.
Yeah.
But they look at my daughter, my light-skinned daughter, and they say to her, even though I'm standing right behind her, "Where's your mother?"
Yeah.
And I say always, "I'm right here." And they go, "Oh, okay."
But if I'm with them, they don't say that.
Yeah, and so why do you think that is?
It's like, your daughters are so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my daughters?
And that's not to say I don't get that too. I
do. Your
get...
oldest would go, "She means us." I'm like, oh, thanks.
I get that as well. People do say, "Oh, you have beautiful children," and
they are.
And they are beautiful. But I like to respond, yes, they are beautiful, but I'm working on them being kind as well.
Yeah. They're getting there. Well, one's getting there.
Okay, come on now.
Context for that is the youngest one.
She's mean. A little spicy.
She's mean to me. She loves me. She's mean to me.
They're just cut from the same cloth, that's all.
Who, me? No.
Yeah, you are.
No.
38-year-old Tava.
No, I'm not. All right.
Okay.
So let's move on to some questions.
Sure.
And you can tell me if you don't want to answer any of these questions. So I think these questions are super, though.
Yes, they're great.
Thank you. And if there's anybody out there that doesn't think they're super, you're probably wrong. So how does raising biracial children affect how you see your own sort of racial identity? Does it?
Well, I'd have to say, because my children are biracial, it makes me think more about race. Although, in my own experience, I think about race more than other people, more than people who are.
Well, I mean, it's your job, and
yeah, it's my job. I'm a black woman. People perceive me as a black woman,
an angry black woman,
and an angry black woman many times. So
I get that too.
I do,
but I have said several times that I'm going to burn a building down or flip a table. So I mean, I earned that one.
Yeah, there's some data to back that one up. Okay, so
you think about race a lot because your experience as a black woman.
Yeah, because of who I am. And so I guess I have to preface this one with how I'm raising my kids and the way I talk to them or think about the experience that they have is very reflected of the fact that I am a black mother raising two biracial daughters.
Yeah.
If I was a white mother raising two biracial daughters, it might look different. If I had sons, it might look very different. Yeah. And so I think often when we think of interracial couples, the meme or the visual that comes up in our minds often is the black and white together. Yeah. So I think people's minds automatically go there, but I think it's important to say that mixed race is like, that's been happening for centuries, generations, eons, right? Like but I think it's also, is exotified a word? Yeah,
I would use, there's exoticism or fetishized.
Yeah, I think it's that, like, if the more different your looks are, the more fantastical your offspring will
like
be,
your kid has a blonde streak.
Yeah.
And this huge head of curly hair, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure people comment on her hair a lot.
Yes. So that's another thing not to...
I mean, I do too, but that's because I want to make a wig out of it and wear it myself.
Yeah, which is kind of creepy.
It's not.
It kind of is, because you have your own hair.
I know, but people wear wigs.
True enough.
Is that not the creepy part? You're like, that is not the creepy part. It's the part of cutting my child's hair to make a wig.
That's the part that's
I know
concerning.
Which part is creepy.
If she's going to cut her hair and donate it for a wig, it would be for someone who really needs a wig.
I really need it.
No, you don't. I'm talking about people with illnesses.
Oh, right.
Okay?
Oh, fine. Next question. This is a good question because people have asked me this before, like I know anything about raising children. Yeah, sure, let's talk about it. But how do you talk to or teach your kids about race and or racism? And when did you start? I know that they're pretty young. Mm-hmm. They're school age, but they're young school age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so have you broached the subject? Like, when Confederate flag Johnny called them mulatto, like, did they pick up on it and go, yo, okay, were they too young?
Yeah, they were really young at the time. Like, we were...
Is it like you just moved in? So they were babies?
Yeah, I feel like I might not have had my second one.
Okay, so she was a baby.
So that means my older daughter was really young. So I wouldn't say that I really thought about, like, okay, here's how I'm going to teach my children about race. But
well, I know you don't have like a lesson plan and strategy laid out.
There's no binder.
You're like, here's my binder. Oh, we're right on track. Like, that's how I would do it. But
in year 9 of race education,
yeah, like
no, it didn't go like that. Although I have to say, when my kids were very little, the school that they went to, the Montessori school that they went to, was very, like, their peers were quite diverse. So different races, religions, etc. And different, like, family makeups represented. So that was helpful because then for them it normalized.
Yeah, they didn't stick out.
Yeah, it normalized many interactions. The other thing I have to say, though, is that it's all based on, again, like, our location, like geographically even. So where we live, even though it's an urban center, where we live in particular, it's a pretty
suburb type.
Suburbia, very white, very homogeneous. And because my kids are very light-skinned, they would, I say, pass in quotes. So I'm not even sure if their peers see them as any different than them. Yeah. Other than the curly hair. And I would say my younger one passes even more than my older one. Yeah. So there were though some like situations that came up, particularly with my younger child, because of how I think she was starting to formulate her ideas about race. So when she was very, very small, I want to say like 3 or maybe 4. Yeah. She said something along the lines of, "Oh, Mommy, I wish you had lighter skin. Why do you have brown skin?" And my husband kind of jumped in, was like, "Hey, what are you talking about?" And he was, had this really stern, like, reaction, disciplinary thing, like, "You can't say stuff like that about people's skin color. That's rude." And I was more like, I wanted to understand, like, what she meant by that, because often these things come out of, like, conversations or interactions at school or anything. And I never really got to the bottom of that one, but I think she was, at that point, recognizing difference in that her skin was different than her mom's skin, and her friends who she identified with felt like they matched her and I didn't match them. Yeah. So we had some discussions around, like, what it meant to kind of, like, what skin color meant, and how it doesn't speak to, like, who a person is. And she eventually came around to the idea that, it didn't have a lot of, it didn't have any bearing on who I was as her mother. And I think, too, as children start grow, like, you have a natural bond with your children, right? So I would say for my older daughter, she didn't necessarily think or have questions about why I look different than she did. It was just, I'm her mom. That's it. Yeah. And there's aspects of both myself and my partner in each of our children in terms of their physical features, right? So
when do you think you would start talking about that identity? Do you wait for them?
So
it's like that.
I think it's a bit of both. So I think in part it is, I try to think very much about what types of things I expose my kids to, so that they understand, what it means to be black, what it means to be white, although we don't necessarily talk about it in black and white terms. Yeah. We just talk about it in terms of, like, this is all part of who you are. You know what I mean? And then some of it So it might be in books that we read, definitely in toys that we buy.
Yeah.
Like, Barbie dolls have come a long way.
Yeah.
And, like, it's interesting. So I might buy my daughter a black baby or dark skinned baby.
Yeah.
But my mother-in-law, who's white, might buy her a white baby.
Yeah.
That's just funny because I haven't really liked any doll that she's bought. Not because they're white, just because I think they're ugly.
Yeah.
But that's a whole separate issue. And then, like, the stories in history that I try and tell them.
Yeah, I remember.
And then
I remember reading with your oldest the Kids Can Press, the Encyclopedia of Black History. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were reading about that.
Yeah, so that was, like, super important.
You know how difficult it is to explain to a 9-year-old what slavery is?
Yeah, that's a heavy conversation. And
What's slavery? Oh.
She really, that sat heavy on her 7-year-old mind. She had trouble going to sleep after some of those conversations about, I just don't know what that would mean. Like, I don't understand.
I can remember she was like, what's slavery? And I was like, oh. And I explained it. That's mean. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
Well, money? Like, I don't know.
That weighed heavy on her little heart.
I know.
She had trouble going to sleep for a few nights when we had
like,
talks about slavery.
Let's talk about it. Let's go to another page. Look, it's Jesse Owens. I don't want to talk about that.
Yeah, no. This is not going well.
I was like looking through for something. Mm-hmm. I'm like, why are we reading this at bedtime?
Yeah. And then I think too, as I discover more about my own self, because I've had a different journey than some of my other close family members, because I came to Canada and I've lived in mostly white neighborhoods, gone to mostly white schools, you know? So my experiences connecting with other Black people have been limited unless I'm back home with my family, right? So as I kind of learn more and discover more, then I'm kind of like, oh yeah, I should really introduce my kids to this idea earlier, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to like, because I'm raising girls, like notions of beauty and what is beautiful. Like specific example, I used to straighten my hair all the time, you know, really common. White women do it. Women of color do it.
Yeah.
Lots of people straighten their hair, but I would like chemically straighten my hair, and it was a lot of work and things like that. And then I realized as I'm raising these sweet little girls that they have naturally curly hair like I do.
Yeah.
And I would never want them to have to go through the whole...
Well, the message is, like, whether you mean it or not, if you have straight hair, that's what you're supposed to do with your curly hair, right?
Right.
Like,
so I wanted my daughters to love every aspect of their physical body, you know, however it turned out. And they both have very beautiful curly hair, and I never wanted them to think that they had to straighten it. Yeah. Or that was the only way to manage their hair.
Well, the problem with that, though, is now your oldest won't let me make a wig out of her hair.
Again, I think you need to examine yourself in that situation.
I just really like how long it is, and I don't have the patience to grow my hair.
So I want my daughters, and I think this might be a little bit separate from race too, to embrace all of them as beautiful and see themselves as beautiful as much as possible, because they're going to be bombarded with all kinds of negative messages about how they should or shouldn't look from outside sources. So as much as I can, I try and promote, you know, your hair is beautiful, and it truly is. Yeah. Because people say all the time, oh, I love your hair. I wish I had your curls, things like that. And so when I cut all my hair off and I grew it out natural, that was a journey for me, but it was an important one, because now I can say, just like my girls, I just wear my hair how it is.
Yeah.
So
That's good. I like your kids. I'm not gonna make a wig out of. I don't want comments. I'm not gonna make a wig out of my niece's hair.
Thank God.
Like, come on. Next is, how do you reply to people's problematic comments? Ooh. And then how do your children reply? I have a bit of a story for that one.
All right, let's hear it.
Because I was teaching at the same school that your oldest was going to at the time. Mm-hmm. And people would say, oh, is that teacher your mom? And she would say no. And they would say, are you sure? And she would say, no, seriously. And then when we would talk about it, like I talked about it later when she got a little older. And so she would be in on the joke and wink really exaggeratedly and go, hey, Mom, wink. And because she knew that it was a problem, but
bizarre.
And she had asked me, she's like, why do they think you're my mom? And I mean, I thought, well, because we're the same color and we have similar hair. And and I said, it's not right that they say that because you should never assume anybody's mom. But, like, I never really brought in the idea of, well, we're the same race. That's why. Like, because, I don't know, it just didn't seem necessary.
No.
Like, I guess I could have said, those people are racist, that's why.
Yeah.
But, I mean, she's 7.
So, yeah, we didn't want to get too heavy. But
so I just be like, because we kind of have the same color skin. And then she put her arm right to mine, and she's like, I guess. And I go, I have curly hair.
Yeah.
We're both fabulously beautiful.
True enough.
Incredibly intelligent. So, that's how I deal with it. I find that your daughters just ask questions.
They do. They're very inquisitive, and they're not afraid to ask, you know. Yeah. I think part of it is just the innocence of childhood, where they're just like, well, I don't understand this, so I'm going to try and ask what this is about. So that helps us kind of navigate situations. I have had to, especially when it comes to hair, and explain to them, it's not appropriate for people to just touch your hair. But I find it happens all the time.
I think that's going to happen because the sort of bodily autonomy of kids is not always respected.
This is true.
And so there's that sort of combination of she has this hair, this curly hair that people want to get in, but she's young enough that people just take the liberty of touching her.
Yeah.
Because I get the same thing. People want to touch my hair, but I like smack their hand out of the way and say, don't you even.
Yeah.
And your kid's sweet and not going to do that. Right? And so even though I told her she's allowed to, then she told me I'm not her mom. And I said, to some people I am.
Right.
So... But she's like, no, that would be rude.
Yeah.
So
we've had to talk through that one, because I know she feels a little bit uncomfortable, and she'll say to me like, people are always patting my head, and I'm like, yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But I find as she's gotten older, she's developed some language to say to people like, you pat my head a lot, and it really bothers me.
Yeah.
And then a lot of folks just say, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing that, you know? Yeah. Or, again, strangers want to compliment your hair and then feel like that gives them permission to, like, reach out and touch it.
Yeah.
And I have physically moved people's hands away.
Yeah.
I don't think she has ever done that. No.
I don't think she would, right? Because, again, it's the childhood thing.
Yeah.
Which I think as a society we need to do a little better with empowering kids to say, no thanks, don't touch me. But
right.
But it was funny because I touch her hair, and then at school somebody went to touch her hair, and I was like, no thank you. And they're like, well, how come you touch it?
Oh.
And again, I was like, well, that's context. I have a relationship with this kid. I've combed this hair. Mm-hmm. Right? Like,
right.
I helped her take care of it.
Yeah.
Like, and so I'm like, you don't have a right to do that. And so, yeah.
Yeah. So when I chopped all my hair off, did the big chop and started growing it out, all kinds of people felt like they wanted to then touch my head.
Oh.
Which is, it's really uncomfortable. And if I walk into a room and I just ran my fingers through some white person's hair,
I had to
they would think I was crazy.
I used to have a stand-up thing about that.
Yeah.
I would have somebody in the audience and I was like, do you like my hair? You want to touch it, don't you? And I said, there's a consequence for touching my hair.
Yeah.
And I said, do you want to pay that consequence? And so the person would touch it, and then automatically both of my hands go up, like, right into their scalp. And I'll be looking at them, and I, like, start massaging their head. And they start laughing. I was like, is it weird? I just figured this is how we said hi here. Like...
Well,
because it's bizarre, right?
It is bizarre,
like,
for you to think that you can touch someone's hair.
So, I mean, that was a little exaggerated, but, like, it's the same sort of idea, right? Like...
Mm-hmm. But I have to cut people a little bit of slack, because I have to admit, as a black woman, when I see a little mixed race child, typically black dad, white mom, and her hair's looking a little nappy, I kind of want to put my hands on it. And I'm making some assumptions about, you probably have a white mom. She probably doesn't really know how to do your hair.
Yeah.
I feel like I should help her, but really, it's none of my business.
Yeah. I am much better. I don't really touch people's head because I'm a school teacher and I am definitely afraid of head lice. But...
and boundaries.
Yeah.
Lawsuits.
That's not why I don't touch it. I mean, I could say that's why, but that's not why. I'm just really afraid of bugs. So, but, I mean, it's, like, I think it's really hard for kids just to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because, like, especially biracial or multiracial kids with different characteristics, it's especially hard for them to say no. Mm-hmm. And that touching is going to happen more frequently.
Yeah.
Right? So, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that one.
I don't know what the answer is either. I know my youngest one, she would probably smack somebody's hand.
Oh, she would. Or bite
Straight
them.
Up. Straight
Kick them.
Okay, I don't think she would bite. Come on. No. Come on now.
She would bite me. I just bite her back.
Again, context.
I just bite her. She doesn't like anybody touching her hair, so it doesn't matter.
No. She's not like...
I like that about her, because you know what? If somebody tries to mess with her, she is going to mess them up.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, I can work with it. It's difficult to parent, but in the long run, it's going to be a good thing.
I'll teach her how to mess them up.
Yep.
She's going to help me flip tables in the future.
Mm-hmm. I think what I've learned over time is how to, I guess, diplomatically educate people versus... the mother bear instinct kick in and you just tell people off.
See, I'm still at that stage with your kids.
Yeah. Get your hands off of my child's head.
Yeah,
that is not really helping the whole angry black woman stereotype.
Mine is more like, don't touch her! Mm-hmm. That's the way that I do it.
Or I'd say as I'm removing their hand, I go, not okay.
And like, nope. I'm going to skip the last question because it's dumb. This is my favorite part. So let's talk strategies. Strategies for raising well-adjusted and well-rounded multiracial children. The reason why I wrote these is because I'm a biracial kid, and
you were a biracial kid. Now you're just a biracial adult.
Why you gotta do that? You're an older adult. Did I mention that in this podcast?
You might have.
And because, like, I grew up during the 80s, and it was... people, like, psychologists were concerned.
Yeah.
about biracial kids. They're like, they're confused. And they're not going to know where they belong. And they were worried about that. And so the focus wasn't on sort of enforcing or encouraging that multiracialism. It was, which one do you look like, and that's what you are. Yeah. Right? And so because I'm light-skinned, but I don't really look like a white person, like people look at me and go, that nose, that hair, you're black. You're right? Black. So that it gets assigned. It got assigned to me. And so there wasn't really much of a focus. And I know that there's articles out there, because I read lots of them, that have the strategies. So I think that it's kind of good to put out there. I think it's especially good to put out there for white people who are raising multiracial children. Hear me out.
I am not disagreeing, actually.
Oh, what?
Okay, so continue.
And the reason why I think it's important for white people is because the way white people have been socialized and sort of trained throughout history to talk about or really ignore race is not good. When I'm not going to say it's not a complicated identity to be multiracial, but it's a lot more to learn about when you're multiracial, right? Like, yeah. And I mean it's complicated, not for me as being biracial. I think it's complicated because of the world I live in, right? It's race is dichotomous. There's white people and people of color. Yeah. And I'm both, right? And so I understand that I'm both. But with the way that race is set up in our society, that's what makes it complicated. It's not me, it's the world, right?
Yeah, so story about that. So generationally. So I was talking to my older daughter about like something to do with Black history or something. And my mom was there. And so I think she was asking a question about like what she was. And I've always, like, if it comes up, I say you're Black and you're white. Yeah. Because your dad is white and your mom is Black. And so you're both. Although I try not to
reduce it to those sort of terms.
Yeah, I don't. It's oversimplifying it, I think. So my mom, in hearing this, was like, "You're Black," and I get why she said that, because historically, even if you're, it's the one drop theory, if you're a little bit Black, you're just Black, and in our home country, that would be how she would be perceived.
Yeah, and same within the South, right?
And same within the U.S., I believe, because the Black-white racial lines are so historically entrenched.
Yeah, and simple and dichotomous, right?
Yes.
That you can't straddle the line.
Yeah, and I think in Canada, and I think in other countries, as time progresses, you can straddle that line, so to speak. Not that you're trying to do it, but...
Well, I think that you can in the States, but like I said, I think it just makes it complicated, right? Because people like to simplify things so that they understand it better. And the way that society has... how we've developed how to talk about race.
Right.
If we simplify it so that you fit into that, people will understand it a little more easily. I liken it to transgender people. Because you're outside of the sort of simple notions of what gender is, people can't fit you into what box they understand, right?
And then they get irritated that there has to be some other box, right?
Right. And so, whereas for being multiracial, I'm not oppressed in the same way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there's that similarity because you don't fit into a certain box that people have come to expect.
Right.
That's a problem, right? And so, what was I saying?
I don't know.
Me neither. Anyways, so that's why I'm saying that the idea, like, my identity is sort of complicated, like, as being multiracial. Yeah. And so that's why I think having strategies largely for white moms that are trying to raise children
Right.
that are multiracial, because
Or even
they are white.
when
but
when I think about people from my generation who are mixed race, who
Yeah.
are raising now mixed race children. So some of my children's friends, they're from mixed race families,
Yeah.
and some of their parents are mixed race.
yeah,
So, and it all depends on how they were raised, which parent is which race, which family members they're more connected to, how they identify. All those things have a bearing on the context. And so you kind of get a read. I don't know, people of color sort of,
yeah,
there's like this black radar kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like, you kind of get a read on, like, some people are okay. They're like, yeah, I'm black. It's
Yeah.
out there. I kind of feel like, yeah, I'm out there. I'm black, right? I'm not
Yeah.
trying to hide anything. But there are some of my children's friends' mothers who are mixed race, and they are not talking about being black.
yeah.
And
I
they're
have
not
friends like
talking to
that.
their children about any sort of blackness, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not judging that as good or bad. I'm just saying that's their experience.
Yeah.
And so,
Because, as a mixed race person,
Yeah.
your identity is usually forced onto you by society, like where you live, who your family is, right? And so, like I said, if I had mixed race friends that are black and white that grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, they identify that way. It's not something that they necessarily identify with.
yeah.
So,
yeah.
but I think that these are good I think they're strategies for every
good.
kid.
I think
I think
Well, yeah, let's be
you want to
honest.
raise a kid and sort of to be sort of an anti-racist activist in their own right. I think these are good for anybody.
I think they are. And I think these are really good for well-adjusted, well-rounded white children too.
Yeah, we're just any children.
And really, let's be honest. Ancestry.com.
What about
That
it?
just blew people's minds when they started sending in their DNA and they found out, oh my gosh, I thought I was British. I'm part Italian and part Moroccan. And you're like, yep, you are. Because
Yeah.
did you really think there was a pure race?
No.
Humans have been around for how many thousands, millions of years?
Yeah, there's no... Yeah. I liked when all the white supremacists and neo-Nazis got it back and they're a quarter black and they're like, this is crap.
They're freaking out.
That was funny to me.
Yeah, that just... Yeah, so I think there's a lot more mixed race people out there than
Then you think...
you think.
I know, I said in the second episode, I think everybody's probably multiracial, but whatever.
Let's be honest here.
Okay, so strategy 1. This is very specific
Okay.
to reject myths that are made about multiracial people, like how mixed race people might be confused about their identity or what. But I think that you can extend that to teaching kids to reject any sort of stereotyping
Yeah.
of any race, right?
Yeah.
And having them learn when it comes up, right? If I remember I was walking, I don't remember where I was walking, but there was a Sikh man coming towards me, and there was a white kid on the street with their white parent, and they're like, and the kid had said, I hate this, had called the man a quote-unquote raghead.
Language again, not cool.
So I never said it, but I heard it. And then the mother had said, shh, and didn't say anything else about it.
That's... You don't say that. No correction whatsoever.
Nothing. And no conversation about it. And,
Yeah.
I said, that's not cool. Because I talk to every child on the street, because I think every child's in my class. But I was like, that's not cool.
We're trying to educate them all.
But the mom didn't do anything. So I think that everybody should just reject any of those terminology, slurs, stereotypes, anything like that, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't know, there's resources.
Yeah.
And there's people.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good strategy. Mm-hmm. The next strategy that was kind of controversial because...
Teach your kids to talk about skin color and race.
Yeah.
So, I think in general, I'm going to go with this is a strong yes. Because,
yeah.
Okay, so this is one of those things where the white privilege shows up.
Yeah.
If I'm a white parent raising white kids, I don't necessarily have to have conversations about race with my children.
But then you're also socialized to think that it's bad to have those conversations.
Yes.
And you might not be equipped for those conversations.
Yeah, there are many parents raising children of color, in particular males, black males, where you are having very unique, specific conversations with your children at a very early age because of how society is going to view them, or experiences that they're having at school or in their neighborhoods that are in general problematic and based on stereotypes and myths. And those would never, ever happen to someone raising a white male child.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have those conversations. For us, we didn't sit down and be specific, but when that example that I shared came up about, why don't you have lighter skin, then we had conversations about, okay, well,
and then your husband's reaction was pretty standard.
Yeah.
Right? For white people, you don't talk about that, don't do that, and very defensive, right?
Right.
Because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is. And where he grew up, it was predominantly white people. He had the token, one black friend. And he was also mixed race,
Yeah.
So, and the conversations didn't come up. And I think now, because of movements like Black Lives Matter, and because we've had just so many incidents of hate and hurt in our communities, it's forcing us to have these conversations. And truthfully, in my experience as an educator, kids want to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
And often when they're saying things that are problematic, like using racial slurs, it's an indication that they don't know how to navigate proper conversations, respectful conversations about race.
Yeah.
So absolutely, teach your kids about skin color and race.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, there's the internet.
Yes.
There's lots of sites.
And I'm going to link a bunch of articles to go along with this episode on the blog anyways, so that could be a good starting point.
Mm-hmm. And I think other easy ways as well is, don't be afraid if your white child wants to buy the black doll, let her buy the black doll. If my black child wants to buy the white doll, let her buy the white doll, There are ways for us to normalize skin color and show diversity through the places we go with our kids, the books that we show them, the movies that we watch, the conversation that we have. Okay, you're going too far
because that's the next strategy.
Sorry.
That's okay. So the next 3 strategies are pretty similar. It's about living in a diverse place, or having your kids attend a diverse school or diverse activities, or having kids participate in activities that promote cultural diversity, like trying something new, or going to some sort of cultural informational event or something like that. You kind of have to go out there. It's really easy to stay sort of in your comfort zone if you live in the suburbs with everybody that looks like you. But.
So let's be honest. So I am a black woman living in a predominantly white.
Is there a word stronger than predominantly?
Yeah, is there a word stronger than predominantly? Because I feel like that would describe my experience more accurately. So my kids are growing up where they're not seeing a lot of children of color unless I take them out of their neighborhood, But in their dance class, for example, there are other black kids, there are other mixed children.
But you also take them to things like, what was the thing you went to on Islam, and they taught you how to do the hijab? And...
So also by nature of my work and because it really is a part of who I am, and it's also a part of how my parents raised me as well. They raised us to learn to understand and appreciate other people's experiences. So although my parents raised us Christian, if they had Muslim friends, we would go to their house. They would talk to us about their culture, about their beliefs and things like that. We would share food that wasn't necessarily part of what we normally ate. And we were never, we were always taught to like try new things and be open and understand. So that's what I'm trying to do with my children. So I take them to like the synagogue. I would take them to, I took them to a Sikh Gurdwara. I've taken them to, so we went to the community iftar for Ramadan. So that they could see people of color, other religions, other cultures, other ethnic groups, and really what it shows them is that we have connections and friendships and relationships with people all across the community, because as I go out, I see lots of people I know. I see some students that I work with, and they're like, oh, these are your kids, you know, and so it really builds community in a really practical way for them.
I like it because it also teaches them, because they really feel that ignorance and fear drive racist behavior, right? And so knowing a little something about a different cultural community, I think, is really important.
Yes.
Right? And so the guy with the Confederate flag on the block, he was able to have that for so long because there was a lack of diversity and there was a lack of understanding why that symbol is a hate symbol, right? And so, and unless it's like super in your face swastika, like people didn't think about those on their symbols. And so I think that having kids learn things really early about different people is really great. Like when I was at that school, because we had a sizable Jewish community of students in that school, because they always did Christmas things, they put up Christmas trees and stuff like that. We decided that we were going to celebrate the Jewish holidays too, and so we did those
Hanukkah.
things. We did Sukkot, and we did all those things, right? So that there was a way, but it wasn't just for the Jewish students. We opened it up to everybody, right? And so making sure those opportunities are there, I think, are really important.
And I think that brings up another interesting story. So, as my kids are understanding and learning like who they are and trying to navigate different spaces, like I remember when you had the Hanukkah party and my daughter was kind of like afraid to ask her teacher if she could go upstairs and be part of the Hanukkah party. Even though she celebrates Hanukkah, she knew about it. There was that awkwardness. And I think part of it is age. Yeah. But part of it is also learning, I guess, where you fit in certain spaces. And I think in that realm, like, that part of her identity had never been discussed, so to speak, or there was never really a space to discuss it, so she just didn't bring it up. And I think that was the case for a lot of students there who were Jewish or Muslim or anything other than Christian, right? So I think that's why I'm so committed to the work that I do, because I think it's so important to make space for all the aspects of a child's identity in the spaces and places that they go to. Yeah,
and the want to share that with the other students as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, so
not feel and not to educate, but feel like you can celebrate it and not hide it.
Yeah. But I think that's a type of education. Yeah. Like, my kids learned how to play dreidel, but they also learned, there's another holiday. This time of year, right? Like, not everybody does Christmas, so maybe I should think twice before I just say, Merry Christmas, everybody! Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so,
Yeah, interesting. So when...
But that was good because then they started including songs about other things
Yeah.
and having other activities for kids that didn't have Christmas when they have like their
Exactly.
Christmas sing-along.
Exactly,
And
yeah.
so, I mean, it's a good impetus for change, and kids can have a really big impact in that. So
Yeah.
that's what I feel.
Yeah, so I intentionally help my children do a lot of things that celebrate not just their culture, but a lot of different cultures. I can't control that we don't live in a diverse neighborhood, even though that's a strategy here, live in a diverse neighborhood.
Well, I
we
kind
don't-
of clumped
we
it together.
Yeah.
If you don't live in a diverse neighborhood, that doesn't mean that you can't go out and find those experiences for
Right.
your kid, right? Like, and it sucks because neighborhoods are still very segregated according to race and income.
Very much.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really live in a very diverse neighborhood, but my neighborhood is more diverse because I have an influx of students that come in.
Exactly.
Because I live near a university. So, I mean, but when I lived downtown, it was completely diverse because there was, you know, housing that was cheaper and
Right.
a lot of different people could live in that core.
Right.
So,
But interestingly, I live a 7-minute drive away from you.
Yeah.
And it is,
it's very different, right?
yeah, it's
So,
very different. And so I can't control who my kids attend school with. Okay, when they were in private school, yes. But that is expensive.
yeah.
And I actually am a strong proponent of public education.
Yeah, me too.
I just wasn't at the time a strong proponent of full-day kindergarten because the class size was 38.
But I mean, there's still some control in that because even if I will be working in a school that is a little diverse, less diverse than my last school,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that I'm not going to do the things that I do. I don't need to have Jewish students to teach about some Jewish holidays.
Yeah.
I don't need to have I don't need to have a huge amount of Muslim students to
say, hey, does anyone know, that it's
like,
the start of Ramadan?
Yeah.
You know?
and like to say Eid Mubarak
Yeah, exactly.
or something and teach the kids about that.
Exactly.
Which had happened. All of my Muslim students were gone because it was Eid or Ramadan or I think it was Eid. And that day I was like, all our students are gone because it's Eid today. And then we talked a little bit about Eid. And it's not all the Muslim students, because one of the students was like, hey, I celebrate that. And he was just thrilled to have it brought up.
Yeah.
Right? And so
I remember being in a school, which will remain nameless, but I was in the library with another teacher, and it was Easter time, and I knew that a few of the students in the class were Jewish, and so he said, okay, bell rang, have a great weekend, happy Easter, or whatever else you celebrate.
oh dear.
And so I said...
And that's Passover. That's the biggest.
And so I said Chag Sameach, which is what you might typically say, and or Happy Pesach, something like that. And this kid turned and his face lit up because he's like, and his hand went up because he's like, okay, finally something I relate to. And the teacher says, I said whatever else you celebrate. I said, I think you can do better.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, just because, the students aren't there doesn't mean that, or the kids aren't there, or that your kids don't go to somewhere diverse, doesn't mean that you can't bring something in, right? If you're at the grocery store and you're like, hey, dreidels, pick them up and, print out the instructions from the internet. That's what I did. I said, in French class, we're playing dreidel today.
Figure it out.
And we did the instructions in French.
Yeah.
And they're like, why are we doing this? I go, because believe it or not, there are Jewish people that speak French. So, so I mean, you can make your own opportunities if things like diversity are out of your control, and they are, but they're not, because you can bring that in yourself, right? I think that's good. Do you have anything to add?
The last one, have kids participate in activities.
Yeah,
that
we
promote
talked about
cultural
that.
diversity. I think we've touched on that.
Yeah, you said ballet.
I'm not sure if ballet promotes cultural diversity.
Well, your the ballet school your kids go to does.
That's just a product of who's in the class.
Yeah.
That's all. And I think...
But there are, like, activities. I know in the town that we live in, there's, like, a steel drum band.
Yeah, there is, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's around.
Yeah.
It just might be out of your comfort zone.
Yeah. It's
Like,
the music they listen to. It's,
like, different... You can go to different concerts.
Yeah.
Or...
I also, I'm kind of intentional as well about teaching my kids that it's their job to try to understand someone's accent.
Yeah.
Or be polite about asking people to repeat things if they don't understand, because I think that's another kind of...
That reminds me, like, and that it's their job if they don't know something about somebody else. It's not the other person's job to teach them.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, to go and find that information yourself, right? Like,
Exactly.
the burden is not on the person that you want to know more about. The burden's on you.
Yeah.
To do it, right?
Yeah. And I think...
And I say that to my students, so... They're like, well, I don't know why he has that thing on his head. Well, I go, it's not his job to teach you. Go learn yourself.
Exactly.
You know, so...
Because you're living in the information age.
Yeah.
I was alive before the internet was invented.
Yeah.
So I know what it's like.
I just went to encyclopedias.
Yeah, but even those were, they got outdated quick.
Yeah.
However, I think in general, the experience that my children are having growing up as mixed race children is becoming more common, I would say. And as they go through school, they will encounter several individuals who have that same experience.
Yeah.
Whereas when you were growing up, there probably weren't as many people who you could say...
I saw them in Benetton ads.
Okay, back to language. Do not call my children United Colors of Benetton. Not cool.
Has that actually happened?
Okay. We are not an ad.
Does that actually happen? I'm just saying that's where I saw myself reflected. There was that one kid with the hair in that Benetton ad. So I'm like, oh.
Benetton was one of the first clothing companies who had
capitalized
someone other than a white person in their ad, So that was exciting. I do remember getting the Benetton catalog.
Yeah,
going,
right?
Cool.
Look
at all these people in here.
It's like, neat.
Yeah.
That's what I
And the clothes look good on them all. Yes.
I mean, I didn't say that. I was like, that's where it was.
Yeah.
So.
But I don't want to be walking down the street with my white husband and my mixed race kids and people be like, hey, United Colors Benetton.
I think that'd be a really dated thing to say.
It is dated, but I have heard it. So
have you? That's brutal.
So
I'd be like, hey, awkward. 1984 called and it wants its reference back. So, like, I would just be like, beat it, chump.
Yeah.
But that's what I don't have anything else to add on this subject. Do you?
I would just say that...
Of course you have something else to add.
Am I the guest or am I the guest?
You're the guest.
Thanks. So, again, as we go through this journey, because, again, my children are 9 and 5. They're very young. I'm sure there's going to be other things that come up over time. And I think it's very heavily based on the communication that I have with my partner. And we are not necessarily on the same page about certain things.
What?
However, we do talk about it, and I think that's really important. And then also the conversations that I have, with my black parents and him with his white parents about how we navigate this process of being a family.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, a lot of it is just really natural, everyday stuff that goes on. We've all got a little bit of dysfunction.
Of course. Like,
a little bit of fun.
It's still a family.
So let's be honest. We're not this weird anomaly where, like,
no.
They do things really differently.
Yeah. I say that about my marriage to people. I'm like, he's still doesn't do the dishes when I tell him to, and
I finally trained him to put the toilet seat down.
I really did, though.
Yeah, let's be honest.
I won that one.
There are some things that are more bound in gender than race. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So that's I think that raising a multiracial kid is like raising any kid.
Any kid.
Because I was like, we're all multiracial. But I do think that we need to be a little more, to use your word, intentional. At
very intentional.
Creating the experience of diversity.
And for my kids, because I am Black, there is an added intention because anti-Black racism is so prevalent.
Well, and when I was growing up, my dad is Black, and so like seeing how he was treated was something that was very important and something that I needed to understand as well. So I mean, you do have to be a little more intentional in making sure that kids understand what is happening. Right. Like I always say, Black kids don't have the privilege and they don't have the luxury of not knowing about racism.
Exactly.
So I think it's the same with multiracial students. In a perfect world, all kids would not have the luxury of not knowing about that, right? Because
it would be taught in their history classes.
So if I were to have if I were to have kids, my kids would be very light-skinned.
Yeah, more than likely.
Because I'm very light-skinned and Donald's so white he's almost see-through.
But things happen. We have lots of examples of, light-skinned people having dark-skinned babies.
Donald's a walking recessive gene.
Okay.
The blonde hair and the blue eyes. So, but I mean, my kids would be lighter skinned, and I would have to be really intentional because they would maybe look white. Yeah, for the most part. And so making sure that they understand that, like, I would be raising them multiracial, but they would have that additional privilege that I would want them to be aware of.
Right.
So, yeah, I think we nailed this topic. I think it's good.
I think we're good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
This has been fun. Thanks so much.
No problem. I didn't pick on you too much.
Not really.
Not like
a little bit of ageism, but anyway.
Not like every day. Ageism. Give me a break. Just because the podcast is over doesn't mean the conversation has to stop. We would love to hear your comments, reflections, and questions. Visit us at our blog, imcpodcast.blogspot.com, or tweet to us at imcpodcast. If you're a Facebook user, we have a page there too at facebook.com/imcpodcast. New episodes upload every Sunday. Our theme song is called Righteous Fight by Angara. Thanks for listening. See you next week.